Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Podcast volume. Testing 1 2. Two. Testing 1 2.
Three, four. Check 1 2 3 4.
Testing 1 2.
Check. 1, 2. Three, 4, 5, 6. Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Oh my goodness. Thank you for helping me out. Get me right. Check, check, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Let's get it. Check, 1, 2. When I say busboys, you say poets, busboy. 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 When I say Angela, you say Davis, Angela. 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 When I say Alicia, you say Garza, Alicia. Alicia. Y'all ready to get this thing started? Say yeah. All right. Greetings, beautiful people. Hey, we sounding good? Mic check. Greetings, beautiful people. My name is Charity Blackwell. I am the director of poetry events here at Busboys and Poets, and it brings me great pleasure to welcome all of you to Busboys and Poets 17th anniversary special event, Angela Davis in conversation with Alicia Garza. Y'all can clap it up for that. You are all here to join this iconic pair as they discuss Dr. Davis's life, legacy, also dive into topics such as abolition, racial and gender equality, feminism, and the birth of social justice movements. So, also a quick fun fact, this will be Angela Davis's first mic check. 1, 2. 3, 4. Ooh, this is better. Y'all like that? Y'all can clap it up for that too. There you go. So quick fun fact, this will be Angela Davis's first public appearance east of the river. That's wild. Let's go. Southeast in the building, say yeah. Let's go. All right, so quickly, since we're in the topic of where you from, who's ever been to a Busboys and Poets events, just by show of hands? All right, awesome. Okay, who's ever been to a Busboys and Poets event here at the Anacostia location? Okay, that's what's up. Cool, cool. So we have people who are familiar with our spaces and how intentional we are with creating very safe and brave spaces for the people who come in here. But for those who are new, if this is your first time, just raise your hand. Let's clap it up for our newcomers. Welcome. Awesome. So for you that are just coming to the space, for those who are joining us at home, we are live streaming on Facebook and on our YouTube page. A little bit about Busboys and Poets. Busboys and Poets is a community where racial and cultural connections are consciously uplifted, a place to take a deliberate pause to feed your mind, your body, and your soul, a space for art, culture, and politics to intentionally collide. We believe that by creating such a space, we can inspire social change and begin to transform our community and even more so, the world. And I know everyone is eager to get started, but before we get started, we got a couple of housekeeping rules to go over real quick. So first thing is, this is a space that is about peace and love. Let me hear you say peace. Let me hear you say love. That is the energy that we are welcoming tonight, peace and love. The next thing, this is community seating. I know I said that before. So I know you're like, oh, I'm saving this seat for grandma or saving this seat for my homegirl up the street. Sorry, y'all. We just got to make space for everyone so that we can make sure that everyone is as comfortable as possible. Also, respect the microphone. This is a full store event. We are packed out, so it's going to get a little bit loud in here because people are ordering, people are eating, people are doing things, getting up and moving. So please try to be as quiet as you can. If you are making orders during the show, try to be as quiet as you can as possible so we can hear the person on the mic. Also, if you have any burning questions for our special guests, guess what? There are Q&A cards and pencils throughout this space. Please write down your questions. A Busboys and Poets rep will come pick up your questions, and we will try to answer as many as possible. After the event tonight, there will be a book signing with Dr. Davis. For those of you who purchased a book, you should have received a number at the check-in, and you will be called by your number, so please remain seated until you're called up. And lastly, if you know someone who could not make it in person here, like I said before, we are live streaming our event, so please let them know that they can join us virtually at our Busboys and Poets YouTube channel, as well as our Busboys and Poets Facebook channel. So we have a really special treat for you. I'm not going to say too much because they're going to speak for yourselves. But if y'all ready to get this thing started, everyone make some noise!
Many men, many men wish death upon me, Lord. I don't cry no more. Don't look to the sky no more. Have mercy on me. Have mercy on my soul. Somewhere my heart turn cold. Have mercy on many men. Many men wish death upon me. The scent of a slow murder is not sweet. It's toxic in this jungle of concrete where men build chemical plants instead of planting trees. Industrial incinerators burn my nostrils till they bleed in my hood. The baby's got asthma, and it hugs their lungs so tight, it's like men be bearing arms against windpipes so we can't breathe easy. The school system strangled my soul and snuffed my spirit. The ghost of white men annihilating the living. Textbooks attempt to erase my ancestors' face as if we never existed, and still I learned to speak the truth, which is a death sentence punctuated with puncture wounds. We so holy, forever on the fence of heaven's gates, because America's been plotting on our plot since we got here. We already the walking dead, and this is the slow rot. The broken-hearted with heart disease. Health systems done failed us, so we dying of organ failures. Doctors ready to grim reap what they've already sown, because it's money in my sutras. America's in love with dead bodies like a Karma Sutra, but Mr. Backlash guess karma don't suture. The policies of dead presidents kill black residents to make more dead presidents, whether by caskets, cotton, or locked in. We stripped of blood and bone, and they headline to spin. They banned the right to abortion, criminalized this womb, and called it cemetery, forcing black mamas to produce black babies while simultaneously lowering our children's life expectancy. See, we be drowning in poverty. So retirement plans be working to death, and we can't even eat healthy. Fresh food, a mirage that I can't see, cut off from the grocer, so we're the only ones left to be butchered, searching for peace. But it seems that men only want me in pieces. Many men, many men wish death upon me. Blood in my dog and I can't see. I'm trying to be what I'm destined to be, but they just want to take my life away. Thank you.
Yep. All right, y'all ready to get this show started? Say, oh yeah. So let's give it up one more time for Lady Breon. That is a slam champ all the way from Baltimore, ranked #1 in the world. It's lit. It's lit. It's lit. Let's get it. All right, so coming up, Now, to get things started, we have founder and CEO of Busboys and Poets. I need everyone please to make some noise right now for Andy Shalom.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to have everybody here. I want to say a very special shout out and thank you to Charity Blackwell. She is what we call our DOPE, Director of Poetry Events. And of course, Lady Breon, who is from Baltimore. She's the International Slam Champion and the Executive Director of the Black Arts District. And she's the host of our Baltimore open mics. How many of you have been to open mics at Busboys and Poets? Many of you. Well, it's certainly an honor to be here, and being here in Anacostia makes it even that much more special this evening. Anacostia is a very special place right from the get-go. I know when I was getting ready to do Busboys and Poets at Anacostia, there was a lot of naysayers who said it'll never work here. This is a very difficult area to do business in. I'll tell you something, this is the most resilient, the most progressive, the most exciting, the most dopest community we are in. And during the worst of times, when COVID was hitting the hardest, this place was the most resilient. We want to thank you so much for continuing to lend your support to us. We are a place named after Langston Hughes, as many of you know. Langston Hughes was the great poet of the Harlem Renaissance. Somewhere in the 1920s, he worked at a hotel in Washington, D.C., the Wardman Park Hotel, where he was working as a busboy. At that time, it was a very difficult time for a black man to be here in America. And a very famous poet back then by the name of Vachel Lindsay happened to walk in. And the young Langston Hughes, being the entrepreneur that he is, decided to slip some of his poetry next to Vachel Lindsay's plate. Vachel Lindsay picked up the poems, read them, and nodded his head approvingly. The next day, on his way to work, Langston Hughes picked up the newspaper, and on it said that Vachel Lindsay had discovered a busboy poet. When he got to the hotel, there was lots of photographers and people waiting to take his autograph. And then, of course, the rest is history. He ended up leaving his job as a busboy and went on to do some great things and some very, very important writing. Some of the things that he did, he traveled to Cuba. Langston Hughes went to Cuba and collaborated with their Langston Hughes. His name is Nicolas Guillen, back in the 1930s. And I'm telling you this because we just had the chance for the first time, we took a delegation from Busboys and Poets here that came along with us, and we went to Cuba, to Havana, and we commemorated that very fortuitous meeting between Langston Hughes and Nicolas Guillen, where they both helped each other to become the great poets that they ended up to be. So this was a very important moment for us to be able to make that connection between the United States and Cuba, the culture of the United States and the culture of Cuba. There is so much intersection and so much overlap, but oftentimes the politics get in the way of that. We are planning going back in February, and we urge anybody who's interested in joining us to come along, because it's going to take people like you and me to break the embargo that's been going on against Cuba for so many decades. When Obama took office, things started to cool off, and we started diplomatic relations again with Cuba. And suddenly, Trump comes in and he puts Cuba on the list of countries that support terrorism. Well, I'll ask you in this formula, who is the terrorist? Who has continued to terrorize Cuba? Who has continued to put embargoes on Cuba? Who has continued to attempt to poison their leaders, to bomb them from the sea, from the air? It's ongoing over and over again. The irony is just too ironic for us to be able to call Cuba a country that supports terrorism. Well, we are the biggest purveyors of violence against so many people throughout the world. So I want to thank you again for being here. We do a lot of conversations here on lots of very important issues, sometimes issues that make you a little uncomfortable. And one of the issues, of course, is race. Race in America is the most important thing that we need to talk about today, yesterday, and tomorrow. And we have a program that we started here way, way back when we first opened the first Busboys and Poets in 2005. Along with my partner there, Pamela Pinnock, who's here. Raise your hand, Pamela, right there. Pamela was the one that helped me start this wonderful conversation called Actor, a continuing talk on race. And every month we have a special program dealing with one issue or another that deals with race. Of course, you can pick any issue in the world and it's going to have race attached to it somewhere. And no other issue than teaching, especially these days. Critical race theory has become at the forefront of so many conversations in politics. We are going to be discussing critical race theory and the courageous teachers that have been able to stand up for it and say, we need to teach the truth to our children. So thank you so much, Pamela, for continuing this. So this will take place on September the 25th. It's a Sunday. It's at 5 o'clock, 5 to 7 p.m. at our Shirlington location. We urge you to be there. It's going to be a really important and wonderful conversation. So another shout out. This always, gives a, look, this is what I call family. You guys are community here. And for me to have the opportunity to sit here in front of you, or to stand here in front of you and say a few things, it's an opportunity to say some things, and we need to support one another. Families come together. What's interesting about Anacostia is this is truly a family, because family tells you the truth. They'll tell you when things are going well, and they'll call me on my cell phone when things aren't going so well. And I appreciate it so much. But part of our family is a very important radio station, WPFW. How many of you listen here at WPFW? WPFW, of course, depends on each one of you to support it. It doesn't just happen. Somebody has to keep the lights on, pay the rent, pay the programmers and other things. It's run by mostly volunteers, and with us is Katia Stitt, who is the program director for WPFW, and they always need your help. So please, when they go on with these pledge drives and ask you to give money, don't give just a little bit, give as much as you can. It's very much appreciated and important for WPFW to stay on the air. All right, so I'm done with my PA public service announcements, and I appreciate you all and your indulgence. So I'm going to ask you one thing. For the next hour to hour and a half or so, I'm going to ask you one thing. For the next hour and a half or so, I'm going to have to ask you to please give your complete undivided attention. This is a super important conversation with two of my favorite people. Of course, I'm not going to introduce them with any lengthy introductions. We have Alicia Garza, one of the founders of the hashtag Black Lives Matter, and certainly someone that has been a very important force in changing the whole conversation about how we talk to one another when it comes to race and black lives. So give her a big applause, please, Alicia Garza. And along with her is one of my favorite people and a very, very good friend, Angela Davis. Angela Davis, of course, needs no introduction. She is someone that I've admired since I was watching television back in the 60s and until now. And to have her here with us for the first time, to be able to have an opportunity to have this conversation in Anacostia, east side of the river, is really historic. So I want you to be in the moment and really understand the significance of this historical moment that's taking place right here today on September the 6th. Incidentally, tomorrow is our anniversary, Busboys and Poets. We'll be here for 17 years. 17 great years. So I would like to bring both Angela Davis and Alicia Garza in conversation. And for the next hour and a half, sit back, relax, enjoy. Thank your servers, our management, our staff, our everybody that's helping to put this together. This doesn't happen on its own. It happens that. So please give them a big shout out, and please take care of them. They're here to serve you. If there's anything you need, please reach out to me as well. So I'd like to bring them both to the stage, Alicia Garza and Angela Davis. Welcome.
give us like 1 second. You know what I'm saying? Gotta get this water going.
How's everybody this evening?
Hey. Oh, we can do better than that. Hey. Ooh, that was good. Shout out Southeast DC. All right, y'all. So, wow. Big thanks to Busboys and Poets for having us. Thank you, Andy. We love you. Can y'all shout out Andy? All right.
It's the 17th anniversary
I
of
mean,
Busboys
like,
and Poets.
that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, hi. Welcome to Busboys and Poets. Welcome to a conversation I have been looking forward to, I don't know, my whole life. I don't know about y'all. My name is Alicia Garza, and yes, in a moment, I get to talk to, I want to call her all the things, but I'm just going to call her beautifully human. I'm just going to call her beautifully human. And you know, of course, I'm talking about the brilliant Angela Davis. But before we get started tonight, I also want to let you know that we are simultaneously recording tonight's program for my podcast, Lady Don't Take No, where every single week you get the best of what's going on in my head, what we loving on, what we hating on, and what we ain't gonna do. Politics, pop culture, how to tell the difference between real talk and pandering to voters for the elections. We cover it all. And I know it's a Tuesday, y'all, but we gonna pretend like it's Friday, because we gotta get through this week after this long weekend. So, can you make some noise for the people who are going to be listening to this episode on Friday? Can you act like it's Friday? That was tight. That was tight. I like that. I like that. Okay, so let me do an introduction. Even though she don't want me to do the introduction, I'm gonna do the introduction. Okay, so through her activism and scholarship over many decades, Angela Davis has been deeply involved in movements for social justice around the world. Her work as an educator, both at the university level and in the larger public sphere, has always emphasized the importance of building communities of struggle for economic, racial, and gender justice. She is the author of not 1, not 2, not 3, not even 5, not even 7, but 11 books. 11 books. That's my lucky number, you know that, right? Including Abolition, Feminism Now, which is co-authored with Gina Dent, Erica Miners, and Beth Ritchie, and a new edition of her autobiography, which I am so excited. Y'all are gonna be so excited about this. You're gonna be so excited about this. And of course, it's just called Angela Davis. And what she is talking about here is gonna be released next week. So are you ready for that? You can get those. You can get them. Are you gonna get them? I thought so. Okay, just checking. So, having helped to popularize the notion of a prison industrial complex, she now urges her audiences to think seriously about the future possibility of a world without carceral systems and to help forge a 21st century abolitionist movement. My friends, please welcome the Honorable Dr. Angela Davis.
Thank you very much, Alicia.
Hi. Oh yeah, this is gonna be good. Okay.
It's really good to be here at Anacostia. Anacostia, right?
All right, here we go, y'all. So, contrary to popular opinion, we are still in a pandemic, a panini, a panorama, if you will. Angela, I gotta ask you, what has your quarantine life been like? Have you developed any unique habits live and direct from Miss Rona?
Well, I could talk about a lot of things, Alicia.
Give us all the juicy stuff,
I-
please.
Well, you know, at first I was going to talk about yoga and Pilates, but I thought it would be really important to talk about the book you just mentioned, which is a book we wrote during the pandemic, Abolition, Feminism Now. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because it's a book that was written collectively. And I had never before written a book with other people. I've done anthologies and edited books with other people, but never before had I written a book where each one of us took responsibility for every single sentence in the book. And that's hard. That's really difficult. It's interesting because we had planned to write the book before the pandemic, and we were already meeting on Zoom, but we were meeting on Zoom in preparation for meeting in person, and we were going to write the book in person together. But we ended up, you know, having to meet every single week, and there came a point where I did not think this project was going to happen. Because there were four of us, all of whom were politically aligned, you know, all of whom were abolitionists and considered ourselves feminists. So we thought, well, this will be a really easy book to write. And then we discovered that we were all utterly different. We had different ways of thinking about the issues, different formulations. We were trained differently. One was an education scholar. Gina is a literary scholar. Beth is a sociologist. And at one point, I said to myself, this book is just not going to happen. But we persisted, and this is also in the spirit of abolition feminism. We worked through it, and in the end, we ended up with a book that doesn't represent any one of us individually, but that truly represents a collective voice. So that was a very interesting experience, and it made me want to do it again.
But are you going to do it again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Gina Dent, Terry Lynn Carrington, and I are now working on a book on Jerry Allen, the piano player.
Come through.
Anybody know Jerry Allen? I know Sonny Stitt's daughter. Where are you?
I heard right here.
Knows Jerry Allen. Oh, there you are. What is your first name? Katia, okay. When you told me Sonny was your father, that's all I could think about. So I know you know Jerry Allen. Anyway, yeah, it's happening.
This.
It's happening right now.
I
So
love
it's a
this.
habit.
Okay, so while the rest of us were figuring out how to plant gardens and, you know, start sourdough and, you know, do our own nails, she was out here writing a collective book on abolition feminism. I'm really trying to get
We did all
on
of
this
those
level.
things too, Alicia.
Okay, just making sure.
We took
Just
walks.
making sure.
You know, I used to love to sew a long time ago, so I brought my sewing machine out and I made one thing and I said, nah, I think I'm past that.
What'd you make me? What'd you make me? What was it?
I made some pants.
Okay.
And I made some masks.
Excellent, excellent. So look, we are living in some pretty serious times. I don't need to tell y'all. We're living in perilous times. And you know, there's a lot of conversation about how polarized we are. All of a sudden, right? We was just all good before, and then Black Lives Matter happened, then all of a sudden we all don't like each other. You know that's not how it went. But it got me thinking that actually there are some conversations that need to be had in this moment, like every moment in history. And in order to have those conversations in a fruitful way, we have to be willing and able to change our minds. Change our minds about things we feel really staunchly about, right? You're a philosopher, so you understand this very deeply. So I would like you to tell me a story about a time when you changed your mind
about something you felt really strongly about. What happened, and what was the result of changing your mind?
Well, Alicia, I could probably give you a number of examples of moments when I was convinced I wanted to do one thing, and then later realized that that was not the way. But the story I want to tell is one that is, in many ways, still unresolved in my mind. And it goes back to my period when I lived in Birmingham, Alabama. I was in high school. Well, I won't tell you all about that. You can read the autobiography.
It's good, too, if you haven't read it.
But at one point, I knew that I wanted to leave Birmingham. I was, I think, about 14 years old. I had this yearning to kind of break out of the strictures of, you know, the most segregated city in the South for a long time. So I was trying to figure out ways to leave Birmingham. Yeah. So I applied to Fisk University for early entrance, because I think at that time I was a sophomore in high school. Mm-hmm. And I also heard about this program in New York that was run by the Quakers that would involve moving to New York. Now, it was supposed to be about Black students from the South living with white families in the North. They framed it as an exchange program. So, you know, one of the first questions I have, okay, what about the white students from the North living with Black families in the South? But anyway.
You're giving me a scene from Get Out right now. I'm twitching, Go ahead.
So, I was accepted at Fisk into the early entrance program. I was 15 years old at the time. And at that particular time, I was convinced I wanted to be a medical doctor. You know, I hung out at the Black Children's Hospital a lot, and it was next door to my nursery school. So from the time I was very, very small, I was persuaded that I wanted to be a doctor. So I figured out, okay, if I go to Fisk at 15, I'll graduate by 19, then I'll go to Meharry, which is right across the street, and then, you know, I'll spend 4 years there, I'll do my anyway, it was all planned out. And I was on my way to Fisk. And then 2 things happened. You know, first of all, I received a form with indicating all of the clothes you were supposed to bring. Mm-hmm. And there was like a long white formal, a short. You know more about this than I do, Alicia, because you're into fashion. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I said, say what? But I'm going to school to learn. You know, not. And then my father, who had actually spent some time at Fisk University, told me that he did not think I should go to Fisk. Not because he didn't think Fisk was a good university, we both did, but he said I wasn't mature enough socially. He said he thought I would be able to hang when it came to the academic side, but it might be the worst decision of my life when it came to other aspects. And that was such a hard decision to make. I finally decided to go to New York, but I've fantasized over the years what it would have been like to have gone to Fisk. And you know, every time I meet someone who went to Fisk, I want to know what it was like. And it's like that would have been my other life. But I also like to think that it would have also have led to struggle. Mm-hmm. Definitely, it would have led to struggle. Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of
That's
glad.
my story.
I'm kind of glad you didn't go. Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
But I love Fisk. I love HBCUs. I love Howard. And I always, find myself imagining what it would have been like to have actually gone.
I get you. I get you. I mean, you could still go to Fisk.
I have been many times.
This time, I'm sure they won't make you wear the white dress. I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't know.
Oh, I have on a white dress today. So.
You're like, I got my own. I don't need your white dress. Okay, so let's get into it, y'all. Angela, your memoir is stunning. It's absolutely stunning. And I've read it before. I read it, I think, in college. And I got a copy of the updated edition just maybe a month or two ago. And I put it on my shelf. I said, I've read this, but now I have a new copy. Then Andy called and was like, would you pretty please? I was like, you don't even have to ask twice. In fact, let me not have you finish your sentence. The answer is yes. And in preparation for our conversation, I decided to open it again. It is so powerful. First of all, you're an incredible writer. Like an incredible writer. Like the way that you grab your reader and sit them down and say, walk with me, and make us feel and let us sit inside your mind, even as it's changing, all the vulnerable parts. Thank you for that. And what I love about this is that it is not a souped up version of how a superhero fell from the sky. It is the most vulnerable pieces. You, in your memoir, talk about how graciously people say to you, they thank you. They thank you for your sacrifice. They thank you for the way in which you've participated in struggle. And you said it always kind of like you feel grateful, but it always doesn't quite sit right? Because there is a way, right, that we individualize movement to individuals as opposed to the ways in which we impact and shape each other, and the ways in which we take action together creates those moments that we are thanking each other for. And one thing that really stuck out to me from your memoir is you said, it wasn't until you heard Erica Huggins, when she was describing her incarceration, say that it was a gift, that it gave you language for why that gratitude in that way never quite sat right for you. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that. It seems counterintuitive to say that your incarceration could be a gift, but I want you to explain that for the folks that are listening. What does that mean for you?
First of all, Alicia, thank you for what you've said about the book. And thank you in particular for what you've said about the writing. And I have to tell you and everyone present that I am not the only person responsible for the writing in that book. As a matter of fact, it was Toni Morrison who persuaded me to write the autobiography, and Toni was my editor. And so she worked with me. I'm someone whose writing style was very much a function of what I had been studying for many years. So I tended to write abstractly, having studied philosophy, right? Conceptually.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I would give Toni a draft, and she would look at it, and she would say, but what was it really like? What was in the room? What color were the walls? What kind of furniture was there? So she would ask me the kinds of questions that helped me to write more evocatively. And I will never forget that experience. That was one of the most amazing experiences in my life.
Yeah.
And I think about Toni every day, and since she died in 2019, I miss her deeply. Not only for what she provided to me, but for what she gave to the world. And in that context, can I say just something else about Toni that you may not know? I can remember having a conversation with her at one point about movements, and she was a staunch supporter of movements for justice and even radical movements, black movements. But she wasn't the kind of person who went out in the streets and marched and yelled and chanted and so forth. It wasn't until later that I discovered that she had decided, as the only major black editor in the country, to use her position to create a record, a historical record. And so she got Muhammad Ali to write his autobiography. She published a book by George Jackson. She published a books by June Jordan. And if it had not been for Toni, I can mention many, many, many other books that she published. But that was her contribution.
Well, we thank her for that.
She had an agenda. I didn't realize when she asked me to write, my autobiography, that I was a part of her larger agenda. So I really appreciate that now.
Yep. She was organizing you. So tell us about this piece. Why do you say that resonates for you? My incarceration was a gift.
Well, I heard Erica Huggins speaking at a conference on restorative justice in Toledo, Ohio, in about, I think it was maybe 2014 or 2015. And so, Erica spent some years in jail as well. We communicated with each other. We knew each other before we went to jail. We met each other as activists in Los Angeles when Erica had driven across the country with her then husband, John Huggins, in order to join the Black Panther Party. I was working with a number of organizations. I also worked with the Black Panther Party, so we developed a close friendship. And I can, that's a long story. And I think I write about some of it in the autobiography. When her husband, John, was killed at UCLA, and the cops arrested her because they accused her of plotting revenge after her husband was killed. She had a 2-month-old baby. It was horrendous. In any event, Erica and I wrote to each other when we were in jail, and I included some of her poetry in the book I edited with Bettina Apteker, If They Come in the Morning. So, when I heard her in Toledo talking about her experience behind bars, and the fact that so many people always thanked her about her sacrifices. And she said something like, well, it wasn't really a sacrifice because I learned so much when I was in jail, to the extent that I consider it a gift to have had that experience. And something really resonated with me when she said that. And now I can say that had I not gone to jail at that time, my life would have been probably entirely different. All of the work that I've done around issues of imprisonment, political prisoners, abolition,
Yes.
It's very much connected to those experiences that I had behind bars. And I'm just so happy now that I actually had that experience, as horrendous as it was. I mean, I'm not trying to convey the impression that it felt good. It was terrible. But looking back now, I know that I probably never would have acquired the insights that I did had I not had that collective experience of being incarcerated with other women. And let me just say this, Alicia, you're asking me these questions that make me think about so many different possible answers. I had been doing work around prison issues for a long time, political prisoners, free political prisoners, but we had always imagined the person in prison as male, you know? And no one had ever mentioned the conditions surrounding women in jail and prison. And when I went to jail, I wasn't prepared for it. It was very different from what I thought it was because the experience had always been gendered as male. So that's another reason why I think it was a real gift to have had that experience myself.
Y'all, if you have not read this book, you have to read it.
Do you all understand what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
One of my favorite pieces in the first part of the book is when you're talking about the camaraderie you developed with all of these women inside, and you all started to build with each other and teach each other how to survive. And so there's an image that you describe of you all learning karate and practicing karate together in the cell blocks. And the other piece that was so powerful is the way that you talked about how there was a good night call. And it would bounce from cell to cell. And they would say, good night, so-and-so, and then that person would say good night to someone else. There's all these ways in which under the most inhumane conditions, we still find our humanity. Angela, I gotta ask you, because I think we're in an age where, I don't know if it's social media, I don't know what it is, but we're shorthanding a lot of things. And movements are one thing that we shorthand. These days, people say that you can start movements from hashtags. And I always say, movements don't start from hashtags, they begin with people. I was thinking about this a lot the other day because one place where you have been very, very consistent is about not reducing movements to their individual actors alone. Because it shifts and obscures our understanding of the way in which change happens, both as people and as a collective. So if we can, this iteration of the Black liberation movement is now called something else. We don't have to go over all that. Same letters, different words. But it has a lineage and a history, and it doesn't start here. Can you give us some background, like how did we get here in terms of Black liberationist struggle? Didn't start with hashtags, didn't start with Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr.
Yeah, how much time do we have?
That's the right answer.
Because none of us would be here had it not been for the fact that this quest for liberation has been going on forever, for hundreds of years. And it's only because of the influence of capitalism, I think, that we tend to think in terms of the lifetime of a single individual.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's up with the...
Are we good on the mic?
Is it okay? I asked you how much time we have, because first of all, I was thinking about the recent death of a woman whose name is Esther Cooper Jackson. How many of you have ever heard her name? Okay. Do you know why?
Take this one.
Is this better? Okay. Should I move back?
Oh, they're working on it? Okay. Well, it's working. You,
Okay,
go ahead.
all right. So,
Esther Cooper Jackson.
Esther Cooper Jackson. Do you think we should move forward or back? Back? Is this better? Okay.
You're good. They're gonna fix it. They're working on it.
Okay, so Esther Cooper Jackson died a few days ago at the age of 105.
Wow.
She was the executive director of the Southern Negro Youth Congress. How many of you have heard the name of that organization? Some of us call it the original SNCC, right? And the reason the names of women like Esther Cooper Jackson, Dorothy, Burnham, Louise, Patterson, my mother, Sally V. Davis, she was a member of that organization as well. The reason why the names don't resonate as they should is because a number of the organizers and leaders were communists, were black communists, including Esther and Dorothy. My mother, who lived in Birmingham, Alabama, wasn't actually a member of the Communist Party, but her best friends were. And she was one of the officers of the organization as well. But that is the group that created the framework for what we know as the Civil Rights Movement. Back in the 1940s, as a matter of fact, there was an amazing conference that my mother attended 2 years after I was born in 1946 that took place in Columbia, South Carolina. And if you look up Du Bois's speeches and lectures, look for the one that is called Behold the Land. That was the keynote address he gave at the Southern Negro Youth Congress in October, I believe it was, of 1946. And so, you know, we have to learn that history, to know that we stand on their shoulders, that we would not be here if not for the work that they did, that there would have been no Montgomery bus boycott, that there would have been no Black Panther Party, that there would have been no Black Lives Matter. And then, of course, we have to go back to the period of slavery. Hundreds of years. As a matter of fact, the reason why Black history is so important to this country and to the world is precisely because at the very heart of that history is the quest for freedom, for justice, for equality, for democracy.
That's right.
And if we can talk about a continuing quest for democracy today, it's only because of the fact that Black people, African-descended people in this part of the world refuse to capitulate to slavery, refuse to give up. And because of their ideas, because of their activism, because of their struggles, we are here today continuing that battle.
Ashe, thank you.
That's my very, very, very short answer.
That was a pretty good answer. All right. So I want to talk abolition. You think we could do that?
Let's try.
So abolition as a framework has been around for quite a while. And in the last few years, it's resurged into the popular lexicon, and now everybody's an abolitionist. That's not shade. It's just to say this is how ideas get popularized. Yeah? This is a good thing. And words mean things. Everything is not abolition, right? And so I want to hear from you, as somebody who has been deep in this framework for a long time, with others, Beth Ritchie, Gina, Ruthie, right? There's lots of folks that have been deep practitioners of what it means to interrupt carceral systems and what we build instead. As you know, Angela, the number one thing people say is, okay, well, if abolition is about not having police, what are we gonna do when people get hurt? What are we gonna do when somebody robs you? So I'm hoping that what we can do here is like a 1A version, not even 101, just a 1A version. What are we talking about when we're talking about abolition? And then if we could also just hit that question real quick. What do we do when somebody takes a candy bar? Somebody's got to be held accountable. You know where I'm going with this.
Well, the first time I actually encountered abolition as a possibility was in 1971.
Come on.
When the Attica rebellion took place. I was in jail myself. And when the Attica brothers engaged in that amazing historic uprising, Big Black, Frank Big Black Smith, absolutely. And speaking of Big Black, thank you so much for raising, yes, absolutely. And you know, I worked with Big Black in an organization called the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression after he got out in order to get the rest of the Attica brothers out. But they were the first ones who raised the possibility of abolition. And of course, abolition has a long genealogy that goes all the way back to the invention of the prison. When the prison itself was invented, there were those who were suggesting that it was the kind of institution that did not belong in a democratic society.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So abolition, not only in its negative meaning, and I think this is the mistake that people make. They assume that we're simply saying that we need to get rid of discrete institutions, but leaving everything else intact. And of course, it makes no sense to just get rid of prisons or get rid of the police and leave everything else the way it is. And I think it was Ruthie Gilmore who uses the term clearing space. Abolition is only about getting rid of what exists now so that we can imagine something better. And this is the point that Du Bois made about slavery. So those of us who are responsible for attempting to popularize abolition in the latter 20th and early 21st century were influenced very much by Du Bois's analysis of slavery. And he made the point that it's impossible to simply think about the institution itself being abolished without creating something new. And he said that abolition democracy, which is the term that was used during that period, the last years of slavery, should involve creating new institutions that would make it possible for formerly enslaved people to be incorporated into a new democratic society. So abolition was not simply about getting rid of slavery, it was about revolutionizing the world. It was about creating a new society. And so this is the paradigm we try to use in terms of thinking about prison abolition. And I can say also that it's not just about substituting other institutions. It's about changing everything. It's about housing and jobs and education and free medical care. It's about, all of the things that might make it possible for the institutions, the carceral institutions of prisons and police to no longer be relevant.
Boom.
And then I'll leave it at that.
President Biden was on TV the other day, and he said something I didn't think I would hear a sitting president ever talk about. He talked about semi-fascism. It was a step. It was a step. Did you ever think you'd see the day when a US president starts talking about semi-fascism and how we need to stop it? Anyways, we'll come back to that. So
I have so many problems with Biden that
I know. I'm right there with you. So, but here's what I want to talk about, because we're gonna talk about him. We're gonna talk about him never. Okay, but here's.
Especially because we just finished a conversation about abolition and mass incarceration, and Biden is not only the one who helped to create the conditions that led to the massive incarceration of Black people and people of color. He continues to hold on to those ideas today.
Well, right.
So I think it's important that he raised the term fascism, but he's also implicated in it.
Correct.
And is not to be congratulated for it.
I'm glad you said it. So let's ask this, though. What is fascism? Because I know coming up in movement, people were calling each other fascist. That's fascist. They're a fascist. Now we have actual fascism. And so maybe we should, just get a quick sense. Because it is true that he is perpetuating this thing that he is talking about. Funding and investing more in law enforcement is a part of fascism, right? White nationalism is a part of fascism. But I worry that the significance of talking about the role of fascism in this moment kind of breezes through because we're excited that he's naming the obvious. You see where I'm going with this? So what is fascism? How should we understand it? And why is that important to talk about right now?
Well, there have been major fascist tendencies in this country for a very, very long time. We can't talk about fascism without talking about racism.
Yep.
And at the same time, there is an economic dimension to fascism.
Yep.
And we therefore can't talk about fascism today without criticizing the capitalism that Biden and all of his cohorts are representing. So it's complicated. There are no simplistic definitions of fascism.
Are there characteristics?
But it's very clear that that we have been, that in this country, there have been institutions and ideologies that harbor fascist tendencies for a very long time. I mean, white supremacy is about fascism. And white supremacy is at the very heart of the entire history of this country. So I don't want us to think that, oh, okay, just because we had a president, what's his name? Well, you know who I'm talking about, right?
Wait a minute now.
Just because that person became president, and because he has influenced huge sectors of the Republican Party, we can talk about fascism. There have been fascist tendencies all along. But I think it is important to recognize the way in which the electoral politics in this country have capitulated to those fascist tendencies. And yeah, fascism.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we have some of your questions, but we want to talk a little bit about Mississippi first. Is that good? Y'all good? Y'all okay? We can keep going?
Talking about fascism.
I know. Okay, so let's just do a quick weekly roundup of all the things we ain't gonna do. And the number one thing on the list this week is that more than 100,000 residents in Mississippi are without clean drinking water, ostensibly indefinitely. And it seems like the country is moving forward as usual and not reading this for what it is. So what that is actually retaliation from, I know, Mississippi, it's retaliation from their racist regime. We learned that the city's waste treatment facility, their pumps completely failed. That wasn't on accident, okay? Residents there say it's been happening for as long as they can remember. Now, before we start talking about crumbling infrastructure and why aren't city leaders doing anything, let's back up for a minute and ask ourselves which city leaders aren't doing anything. You better believe if that was a rich white community where the pumps failed, folks would be drinking and showering and all the things. Am I right? Now, Jackson has been a bit of what you might call a rebel city inside of a Republican-controlled state. And when I say Republican-controlled, I mean a Republican trifecta and a Republican triplex, which essentially means every major position, governor, attorney general, the balance of power in the state legislature, majority of the mayors throughout the state, except for Jackson, a Republican. Not only that, but the mayor of Jackson, which is the largest city in Mississippi and the blackest, is none other than our brother Chokwe Lumumba, who is the son of the late Chokwe Lumumba, who was one of the founders of the Malcolm X grassroots movement, former vice president of the Republic of New Africa, a human rights attorney, and the former mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. Now let's do some math here. And Angela, perhaps you can give us a history lesson here about Mississippi. Now, do y'all think the white power structure was happy about the blacks taking control of the state capital and the state's largest city? You think they were happy about that? Can you talk to us a little bit contextually? How might we understand how more than 100,000 people are indefinitely without drinking water?
You know, this is environmental racism, and it's happening all over the country. And I think it's important to connect what's happening in Jackson, Mississippi right now. And Chokwe Lumumba is really phenomenal. His father, Chokwe Lumumba, with whom I worked for many years, who was one of the leaders of the Republic of New Africa. What are they doing now? They're bringing plastic bottles of water to distribute to people. I get upset seeing all of those hundreds of thousands of plastic bottles that are supposed to address a water crisis that has been brought about by the fact that the state of Mississippi and the city has not kept all of the industrial machinery and so forth necessary to clean the water intact. And now they're bringing plastic bottles of water in, and they're talking about privatization as the answer. The solution is the major problem from the outset. So, I don't know, didn't we learn this when we witnessed what happened in Flint? And then don't you know here in DC what that means for Black people and people of color to constitute the communities that receive the water that is most polluted, the air that is most polluted, where more children get asthma? I mean, this is the core of our struggle. And I don't think that we should think about it in terms of discrete solutions. It's about racism. It's about structural racism. It has to do with what's happening with the healthcare system. It has to do with all of the services that poor Black communities do not get. They don't care if Black kids get asthma. They don't care about all of the diseases that come from drinking water that flows through lead pipes. And we are only allowed to be attentive to these issues when a crisis emerges. And then they provide the kinds of crisis solutions that only further aggravate the problem. Because I'm thinking about all of those plastic bottles that are going to be at the bottom of the ocean that are going to make it impossible for this planet to be inhabited by any living beings. And that is about capitalism. It's about capitalism. I mean, it's why all of these billionaires are now trying to find their way to other planets. The space travel, right? They're getting ready to colonize other planets because this planet is going to be uninhabitable.
All right, we are ready to take your questions.
Check. Down here.
Hi, my love.
Can we give it up one more time for Ms. Garza, Ms. Davis? So, y'all gave us a plethora of questions to pick from. So the first question, 1 out of 3 adults in Ward 8 can't read. Is a convo about the prison abolition truly accessible to these people, even though they are heavily impacted by this issue? How do we make the convo about them accessible to them?
The convo about?
About accessibility, capitalism.
Accessibility?
Yes, for those who can't read in prison. Let me repeat the question, sorry.
For those who can't read?
Correct. 1 out of 3 adults in Ward 8 can't read. Where we at right now?
1 out of 3 adults
in Ward 8, which is where we're at right now.
Cannot read.
Yes.
Okay.
The convo about prison abolition truly accessible to these people, even though they are heavily impacted by this issue? How do we make this convo about them accessible to them?
Thank you.
Well,
we're on the same page now, y'all. Yeah.
You know, many years ago, when a number of us were coming together to try to think deeply about possibilities of abolition and what might be abolitionist alternatives to prison, one of the things we talked about was education. And of course, when you talk about education, you have to recognize that the schools are so polluted with the notion that black children have to be disciplined, you know, just as black and other adults have to be disciplined in prison, that kids are really only attending finishing schools for prison, for jail and prison. So not only do they not learn how to read and write, they don't learn how to dream. So, you know, it's really not about the mechanical process of learning to read. It's about learning to think. It's about learning to conceptualize. It's about learning to imagine something that is different from the conditions we experience at this moment. So a lot of people who end up going to prison, well, among all of those who end up going to prison, the ones who save themselves are the ones who teach themselves to read, to write, to think, to dream. And at this moment, there is so much amazing intellectual ability behind bars. You know, a lot of us like to say, if you could just let, you know, the sisters, the brothers, the siblings who are in prison doing all of that studying now, if you could let them out, they will help us find the answers to our problems in the larger world. They will help us to, you know, move toward a radical future. So I think that you don't want to talk mechanically about learning how to read, because, you know, that's neither here nor there. You can learn how to read and you can become a fascist. You know what I mean? But it's really about cultivating the possibility of thinking deeply and helping us prepare for the revolution, or helping us push the revolution forward, because I don't think the revolution is one event. It's what we're doing right now. It's ongoing. And I think that there are probably proportionally more people behind bars who are willing to engage their intellect, their emotions, their talents in those collective activities than there are anywhere else in the world. So yeah, open up the gates. Let them all out.
Thank you.
But I can say also that that's not the only thrust of abolition. Abolition is about creating a new society, you know, making it possible for people to live fulfilling lives so they do not end up going into these places that we call prisons.
Awesome. All right, let's keep it moving and grooving. So, we have a question from Stuart Anderson, who is the Executive Director of Family and Friends of Incarcerated People. So, here you go, sir.
Thank you very much. As he said, I'm Stuart Anderson, Executive Director of Family and Friends of Incarcerated People, an organization born inside of prison, Lord. And so, you just spoke about education, and the question before that was about the fact that so many people in war, they can't read. 3 steps. Give us 3 steps toward abolition that people in this room can walk out of this room and execute.
Okay. Well, first of all, maybe I'll stop. I could probably do about 10 or 20, but I'll try to stop at 3. One thing is to talk more about what is happening to our people who are in prison. Involve them in your conversations. Don't forget that they are locked away. In a couple of days, in about 2 days, we're going to go in to see Mumia Abu Jamal, who has helped us think not only about issues affecting people in prison, but about issues affecting the world. Be aware of the fact that there is so much a beautiful energy locked up inside. Go and visit somebody. Go visit somebody. If you know someone, go visit them. And if you don't know someone, figure out how you can get into a jail or a prison. I'm telling you, well, Gina will remember that when we organized Critical Resistance back in 1998, we had a Go to Prison Week. And we encouraged everyone to go to prison. I mean, not go to prison, but figure out how to get in. Go visit an individual. Use your skills as a teacher, as an artist. Share what you know and your capacity with people behind bars. So that's another thing. And I'm also going to say that we can't assume that it's only those who are in prison who suffer the effects of our carceral society. We all think in carceral terms. So many institutions, as I was saying before, schools that are supposed to teach kids how to read and imagine and think and learn, end up teaching them, how to walk through a metal detector. Get rid of all of the school resource officers because activities in schools that used to be considered what kids do. This is just how kids behave. They're becoming criminalized, and children end up going to juvenile detention facilities for talking back to the teacher. And you're supposed to talk back when you think something is not right. But let's also think about the ways in which we have been influenced in our own emotional responses. How many of us think punitively, think about retribution? When someone does something to us and it upsets us, how many of us immediately go to, how can I get back at that person? What can I do to her or him or them? And that's the carceral logic of the state. So that's 4. I'm at number 4. So I can keep going, but I think you understand but thank you so much for your work. And thank you again for evoking Big Black, my dear friend, Big Black.
Awesome, word. We're going to get to 2 more questions. Please make the connection between, if you can, the black and brown struggles in America and the Palestine struggle in the context historically in Israel and America.
Thank you so much for that question.
Shout out to Ernest Johnson.
Who?
Ernest Johnson.
Thank you, Ernest Johnson. Because I was beginning to think that we have spent all of this time talking and we've stayed in the US. As if a world doesn't exist, as if struggles aren't happening, all over this planet. And certainly the struggle for Palestinian justice for Palestine, the struggle against the occupation, against the Israeli occupation of Palestine is one of the most important struggles of our time. Talking about fascism, talking about apartheid, talking about racism. And I think it's also especially important for Black people and people of color and those who struggle against racism to realize the extent to which Israel has claimed this exemption to charges of racism because of the fact that the state of Israel was created to give those who suffered under the Holocaust a safe space. Now, we all believe that people deserve safe spaces and places to live and thrive and love, but you cannot excuse the treatment of another people, of the Palestinian people, by pointing to the fact that Israel is a home for the Jews. I mean, I'm totally in opposition to anti-Semitism. As a matter of fact, I believe that if you are opposed to racism, if you are opposed to anti-Semitism, you also have to be opposed to the occupation of Palestine, if you're going to be logically consistent. And speaking about that, can I say just a word about the Ukraine?
Of course. Go for it.
Oh, I'm not supposed to say the Ukraine. I'm supposed to say Ukraine. I'm sorry. I'm remembering when it was a part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and my heart is with people who are suffering as a result of Russian imperialism in Ukraine. But the fact that the U.S. government is spending billions of dollars to buy military equipment to send to Ukraine while people are suffering in Mississippi, I mean, that makes no sense at all. And, as I am in solidarity for those who are fighting for their lives in Ukraine, I also have to point out that there's some racism involved in the way in which Ukraine has been represented as the country that deserves solidarity from people all over the world. What about Afghanistan? What about the Kurds? I mean, what about Iraq? Anyway, you see the point that I'm trying to make. So, thanks for the question.
No, thank you. Give it up for that answer, y'all. Gee. All right. Just scoot on right by here. All right, we have a question from a special individual. We have Ife Teo Bowles, who is 10 years old, who would like to come and ask you a question. You want to go up there, Ms. Davis? Come on. Go talk to Ms. Davis.
Hi, I'm Ife. I'm 10 years old, and my world is probably very different from your world when you were 10. I live close to here, and in my world, I see a lot of gentrification, inequality, and racism. Yet, I experience a lot of kindness, community, and happiness. When you were around my age, what was it like, and what was something that influenced the work that you do now?
Wow, Ife, thank you so much for your question, Ife. You're so beautiful. Yeah, I can remember when I was your age. And I was living in Birmingham, Alabama, which was at that time the most segregated place in the country. And I was already doing what you might call activist things. We didn't use the term then, but it was about feeling that we as Black children were valuable, that our lives mattered. When everywhere we turned, we heard, white people saying that we didn't deserve any attention at all. We didn't deserve, our books at school were the books, the torn and tattered books that the white children had cast aside. So, and we knew that. We knew that we were reading throwaway books. We knew that our schools were so much worse because the white children's schools were so much better. And we could often, from my elementary school, I could look up over the hill and see this beautiful brick building where the white children went to school. So, one of the stories I tell, I've told this story many, many times, is that we used to have these great games in my neighborhood. You know how kids play hide and go seek? You play hide and go seek? Okay, well, we figured out a game that was kind of similar to hide and go seek, but it was about running across the street where we weren't supposed to go because white people lived across the street, and the street was the border line between the Black neighborhood and the Black neighborhood. So we dared each other to run across the street. And then you could actually be the winner if you would not only run across the street, but if you could run up the steps to a white person's house and ring the doorbell and get back to safety, get back home before you were caught. So we used to play a lot of games like that, which were about resistance. It was learning how to resist through our play and through our joy. And this is one of the things I like to emphasize, that being involved in struggle and organizing, it doesn't have to be something that you associate a lot of sacrifices with. I say all the time, people thank me for my sacrifices, and I say, I don't think I sacrificed anything. I had a beautiful life, and I'm continuing to have a beautiful life. But the final thing I'll say is that when I was 11, which is 1 year older than you are now, I participated in a interracial discussion group at my church, which was the First Congregational Church. So we would meet every Friday and talk with white kids. It was like Black kids and white kids talking to each other. And as a result, the Ku Klux Klan burned the church where we were meeting. So yeah, I think that's what I was doing. But I was also having fun too. And I was also reading. So I would say it's so important to read. And especially now, there's so much more literature available from people not only in this country and people of all racial backgrounds, but all over the world. So I would encourage you to read, think, play, organize.
Nice.
That's one answer you're going to remember for a long time, right? I wanted to bring up somebody to the front here to say a word or two. Reggie Douglas. Reggie, come on up. Reggie is executive director, artistic director of Mosaic Theater. And they have a very, very special trilogy that they're about to put up. I think a lot of you will be very interested in learning about it and hopefully participating in it. I also want to thank, of course, the two of you. Thank you so much, Alicia Garza. Thank you so much. Angela Davis. And one other thank you, of course. We rent this place. We don't own it. We rent it, and we rent it from what is termed landlord, which I hate that term. It feels so antiquated. But there's no other place that I'd rather pay rent to than the Southeast Family Strengthening Collaborative. They are duly our landlord, and we appreciate them so much because without them we wouldn't be here. They've been so helpful and such a great ally for us to continue to thrive and survive in this place. So big shout out to Dion Bussey, wherever you are, Dion. I know you're somewhere in here. Thank you so much for allowing us to share this space with you and continue to be your tenants. Every dollar we spend goes back to you all in the community. So this is great stuff. Thank you. So Reggie, come on up. This is Reggie Douglas. I've gotten to know. He's a super bright, young, artistic director of a theater that speaks truth to power, that speaks about racial justice and equality and issues that oftentimes some theaters want to shy away from, but not Mosaic Theater. So tell them about the upcoming trilogy that's going to take place.
I was not expecting this, so... but thank you, everybody. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Busboys. Thank you for everything. Very much for today. As Andy said, Mosaic Theater, we believe that theater can be a place where we activate conversations that can ignite community building and civic change. We are not shying away from the issues, including racial injustice, that are permeating this city and the country we live in. And we believe that the arts are a place where we can activate change. And this fall, we're producing a trilogy of plays by Ifa Bayeza, sister of Ntozake Shange. So you know the pen is powerful. Looking at the life, death, and even more so the legacy of Emmett Till. 3 plays, The Ballad of Emmett Till, Benevolence, and That Summer in Sumner, that look back so we can reckon with where we've been, reflect on where we are, and begin a conversation about how we move forward. October 4th through November 20th at the Atlas Performing Arts Center on 8th Street Northeast. We are really excited about this production and all the work we're doing around the city to spread the word. A lot of it in partnership with Busboys and Poets, so thank you. I hope to see you at the theater. We can continue to build community through the arts and change this city and our country for the better. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We're going to have Angela do a signing, book signing at this point. Is that all right? So if you guys can please stay seated for a moment. Just bear with us for just one moment so we can situate things and make this as efficient and painless as possible for everybody.
Andy, can we do one more set of thank yous real quick? Because we've
Sure.
got some folks. Thank you to Robert Ventura, Alicia Bird, and Robert Young Jr. for your technical assistance this evening, for helping to record and make sure everybody could participate. Thank you for that. Thank you to Andy and the team at Busboys and Poets for having us here tonight. And as always, thank you, Angela, for bringing your wisdom, your humility. Thank you to what? I'm sorry, thank you to our interpreter, to our signer. Tell me your name, my love.
Billy Sanders.
Thank you, Billy Sanders, for making sure that this program was accessible. And thank you, Angela, for sharing all of your wisdom and all of your insights with us tonight.
Peace and love, everybody. So hold on a minute. Wait for the next announcement to be able to get up and get your book signed and hopefully take a picture. One moment, please. Who's handling this?
Hello. All right, folks. Thank you all so much. My name is Lori. It's so nice to see all of you out here tonight. I'm the Director of Operations for the bookstore, and we're going to try our best to do a neat and orderly signing. So, please